My friends, this channel is usually about the best guitar advice that I can possibly give you, but today I'd like to talk about some bad advice that I personally received, either from private lessons or teachers when I started out playing guitar, or even later on at the music conservatory where I got my degrees in music and guitar playing. So outdated and impractical advice and guitar exercises that will actually hold you back on your guitar journey. But we're not just trash talking in this week's video. I will also show you 4 really amazing brand new exercises that I desperately wish I would have worked on instead of focusing on this terrible advice that I got. So let's talk about the first topic, which concerns how I'm actually playing guitar. Most commonly referred to as guitar technique. So when I was studying music and guitar at the conservatory where I got my degrees from, there barely was any talk about guitar technique, and most teachers there told their students technique doesn't matter. Kind of like never focus on technique, find your own voice and express yourself. And when it comes to music that can make sense, because nobody wants to listen to an exercise that's repeated over and over again. That was hardly a song, right? But with the more complex and virtuosic guitar stuff that I wanted to learn and to play, I was quickly hitting my personal boundaries when it comes to speed. So I couldn't play the fast and interesting guitar solos that I wanted to play. And in my first year there, I felt like I wasn't really getting better. And that's because I was working with a weird pick grip, like a reverse angle like this. And I barely had any control over my fretting hand fingers, especially that flying pinky finger. So the pinky was always bending away like this, and there was tons of exaggerated finger movement when I was playing. So it always sounded really sloppy. So from everything that I have personally learned and experienced in the last 20 years, don't focus on technique is absolutely terrible advice. I know that there are sometimes good intentions when it comes to this statement, like focusing on musicality, on expression with your guitar playing. So developing a nice sounding, wide sounding vibrato or expressive string bending techniques instead of only drilling fast alternate picking and sweep picking all the time. But I feel overall there's usually some kind of fear behind this statement. It's kind of a self-defense mechanism for a lot of guitar players to say never focus on technique or technique will ruin your sound or something like that. So to keep it short, my personal biggest wish is that I could travel back in time and focus on guitar technique very early in my personal career. Because if you subscribe to this channel, you know that I had to correct so many bad habits with my playing. The biggest one being keeping the fingers very close to the neck so that I get some clean results whenever I'm playing very fast. And with today's first exercise, I want to show you the exercise approach I wish I worked on all these years ago. Check out this extremely helpful workout. So with this exercise I was playing through some very common arpeggio shapes that you will probably recognize. But the twist with this exercise is I'm always letting the note with my pinky finger ring out over the rest of the notes. So I'm keeping my pinky finger on the note and on the fret, just like this, so that it can ring out. I focus on not pushing or anchoring extremely hard with the finger. I'm just lightly touching the fret so that the note can ring out. And meanwhile I'm working with my other fingers to play the rest of the arpeggio, and I'm always lifting each finger after each note that's played, but my index finger stays in place. And this first exercise is absolutely incredible when it comes to getting your pinky finger under control. If you do this for just 1 week in your routine every day, you will see insane results with your pinky finger control, and you can kiss your flying pinky finger goodbye. By the way, all of the awesome exercises I'm showing you in this video are part of the brand new practical exercise package I made for my Guitar Academy on patreon.com/bernd. So all students over there can download this package, which includes fast and very slow play-along videos of the exercises so that you can practice together with me in your routine, backing tracks with and without my guitar. Of course, you get the PDF tabs and guitar profiles with full instrumentation, so with bass and drums, so that it's actually fun to listen to and to play along to. In addition to that, you get access to 12 full step-by-step guitar technique courses that come with 30-day practice plans so that you can master fast alternate picking, sweep picking, all the really cool techniques that you probably want to learn. You also get access to 5 music theory courses that take you from the basics to intermediate and even more advanced, really cool concepts, and also 4 home recording courses that will teach you how to record at home and how to dial in a killer guitar tone with absolutely any plugin or amp. And there's even a personal coaching tier in case you want my personal input and feedback on your progress. We only got some limited slots left for this month because the demand is crazy high right now, and we want to keep the quality up, especially with the personal coaching. So click the link in the description or in the first comment, patreon.com/bernd. See if there's a slot left for you this month. I'd love to welcome you to my actual Guitar Academy. That's the full experience, not just the free YouTube videos. I'm waiting for you over there, but now let's check out the next exercise. All right, so the next pretty harmful statement and bad advice comes from the opposite side. So guitar players that are quite fixated on technique, that often say never study music theory. It destroys the feeling in your playing. It will get too complex, too mathematical and so on. That's some really terrible advice as well that I followed as a teenager because one of my teachers said it. He made it sound like guitar playing is really magical and special and you're not supposed to know what you're actually doing, when in reality he probably just didn't have any music theory knowledge at all and wanted to hide that or make it sound cool or something like that. A practical example of why that's actually pretty bad advice is that sometimes you might have a really cool riff. I don't know, something like this, just made it up on the spot. And if you don't know any theory at all, you might have some problems with following this up for a big chorus, for example. So you will go like, ah, no, that doesn't fit. That also doesn't fit. What? No, that also doesn't fit. Or you don't know which scale to play over, you just memorized like 2 or 3 fragments that you keep repeating. Like that kind of works over most things. Or that short phrase, when you move it around, usually works over most stuff. But you never truly unlock the fretboard, so you don't see the most important scales when you look at the neck. You never see the most important arpeggios. You don't understand how all music is connected. And you always sound like an amateur because you repeat your 2 or 3 tricks that usually work over and over again without ever achieving true freedom when it comes to your songwriting, your riffs, your licks, your improvisation, simply because you're afraid to look into some music theory. And in this video I want to show you my favorite exercise when it comes to scales. We will just take the C major scale in a very common position on the fretboard. As you probably know, this scale consists out of the notes C, D, E, F, G, A and B, and those notes just keep repeating in higher and higher or lower and lower octaves. And for this exercise we will focus on something quote-unquote scary for a lot of guitar players, the circle of fifths. Please don't click away from this video once you see this graphic. I promise it's not as bad as it looks. So I don't want to go too deep into theory with this video. There are a lot of music theory courses in my Guitar Academy on Patreon. I just want to focus on the keys of C major, G major, D major and A major. As you can see, they're on the circle, kind of descending to the right. And as you can also see, there's always one more accidental added to each key. So for C major we have no accidentals, for G major we have 1, for D major we have 2, and for A major we have 3. And for the upcoming exercise I will play each scale for you and show you the way of understanding and visualizing scales on the fretboard that made my brain explode once I found out about it. I will play it for you real quick, maybe you can find out what this is all about. So as you could see, for this exercise I was starting with the C major scale on the 8th fret. And then when I played it back down, I was already switching to the G major scale. But instead of taking this scale box that you probably memorized for C major already and moving it right here so that it starts with G, which is how most guitar players work with scales, I was keeping the scale in this position. And since there's only one accidental for G major, so all the notes are the same when we compare it to C major, there's only one note that changes. F turns into F sharp. That's the only difference between C major and G major. So when I switched from C major to G major in the second measure, I was simply playing F sharp in every position instead of F. F sharp, F sharp, F sharp. So all the same notes as in C major. I just changed F to F sharp and got G major that way. Then when I played it back up, I was already switching to D major. This scale has two accidentals, but the first one is the same obviously, so I keep F sharp from G major that I played in the previous measure, but now that second accidental is C sharp. So for this scale I'm going to play C sharp and F sharp, but the rest stays exactly the same. And for the last measure, I was switching to A major, where we have 3 accidentals. But once again, we already know about 2 of them with D major, F sharp and C sharp. Now we are just adding G sharp as well. So that means you don't have to learn thousands of scales all across the neck and memorize each scale box, so to say. You just have to understand which notes are changing when you switch between keys. Often it's just 1 note or 2 notes and you can completely ignore the rest. And that's the fastest way to master all scales across the neck. Once again, if that was a little bit complicated, remember that I have 5 in-depth music theory courses on patreon.com/bernd for you that dissect this way of visualizing the fretboard much slower and more in detail. So if you still have a lot of gaps in your music theory knowledge, just click the link in the description or in the first comment, patreon.com/bernd, and start these music theory courses today. I promise you will not regret it. The next really bad guitar advice I got concerns technique once again, building speed. And it was, if you want to learn how to play fast, simply practice slow and play a little bit faster every single day. If you watched a couple of my videos already, you know that this is basically the worst advice you can give someone that wants to build speed, because you can't just practice something like an exercise or a full song or solo very slow and then just play it 1 BPM faster every single day until you reach your desired tempo. It simply does not work this way. Just always think about the analogy of walking, meaning playing very slow, and running, meaning playing very fast. You will never learn how to run if you always just walk a little bit faster. Those are simply 2 completely different movements and motions that require different muscle groups and a different way of thinking. And most players that just practice a little bit faster each day hit a really awkward wall with their technique at one point, usually at 120 or 130 beats per minute with 16th notes. That's where you slowly start to transition into that running motion. And the best exercise approach I personally found for this is working with speed bursts, so short bursts of very fast playing, and allowing yourself to sound sloppy in your practice routine. That's extremely important. So here's an exercise that's perfect for that. Check it out. So with this exercise I was playing quick chunks and speed bursts in the harmonic minor scale, with 1 challenge added to it, so just 1 string change, so to say, 1 transition from the lower string to a higher one or from a higher one to a lower one. And when you download your practice files on Patreon for this exercise, you will see that there's a slow version and a fast version. The slow version is just there for you to memorize the pattern of this exercise, but I want you to practice to the fast exercise right away, even if it seems completely out of reach. So please feel free to sound like this in your practice routine. This is exactly what you want. So very sloppy, really bad, but this will slowly train your hands to develop that fast picking motion and fast fretting hand movements. And I promise you will not get there by just practicing a little bit faster each day. You just have to start practicing way too fast and really sloppy in your practice routine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. This is exactly what you want. Just make sure not to hurt yourself or to push really hard when your entire arm is hurting. You're still aiming for small movements, of course. The 4th myth and bad advice that I want to talk about today is something I keep hearing online, and I also keep seeing it as a bad habit in the personal coaching group of my personal coaching members on Patreon, and it's you always have to anchor your picking hand on the bridge. So as you know, in most cases I definitely place my picking hand on the bridge for maximum control, especially when it comes to virtuosic guitar playing. So when I'm playing sections and solos like this, my hand is never floating in the air like this while I'm picking. That only happens when I'm strumming chords. But a big misunderstanding is that the hand should be anchored on the bridge like this. If it's completely stiff and anchored on the bridge like this, I would have to turn my hand like this to play on the lower strings and turn my hand like this to play on the higher strings. So I end up completely different picking angles for the strings if my hand is anchored right here. And I also risk pushing on the whammy bar if I really anchor it hard. For maximum control with my picking motion, I actually want it to move along depending on which string I'm playing on, so it's never stiff and anchored and I'm only moving it like this. It's actually moving with the strings so that I always end up with the same picking angle for all the strings. Here's a really cool exercise to practice this if you feel like this is a bad habit you need to correct. So for this exercise I was once again working with some very common arpeggio shapes. major arpeggio shapes for a change. And I was first playing them with sweep picking, because that's when this kind of gliding movement where you follow the strings occurs quite naturally. I know nobody that sweep picks like this. That feels pretty wrong, and it's not great because you end up with a different picking angle for every single string, as we discussed. So first I'm sweeping the arpeggios and I focus on following the strings, which usually happens naturally for most players. But then I switch to alternate picking and I try to mimic this exact movement. So although I'm picking every single string individually, I still want to focus on moving like if I was sweep picking, so that I end up with the same picking angles for every single string. And that's a really amazing exercise for your picking control and for your picking technique in general. Alright my friends, I hope that these really awesome and practical exercises will save you from the really bad guitar advice that's floating around out there. Don't forget to download the entire practice package for this week on patreon.com/bernd. That's my Guitar Academy, and the link is in the description and in the first comment down below. Aside from all these awesome practice files, you also get access to 12 guitar technique courses, 5 music theory courses, and 4 home recording courses. And there's also a personal coaching tier in case you want my personal input on your guitar technique or your guitar playing in general. So I'm waiting for you inside of my online Guitar Academy. Hope to meet you over there. Until then, thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.